I've seen too many people grab the cheapest GPU they can find, only to discover a handful of games stutter, textures disappear, or the card simply refuses to stay cool under a long session. The regret that follows feels almost inevitable when you cut corners on a component that's supposed to be the heart of a gaming rig. That's why I wanted to see if MSI's inspired GeForce RTX 5080 with 16GB of GDDR7 can actually feel like a smarter purchase rather than just another pricey flash in the pan. Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. The moment I unpacked the card, the first thing that struck me was the triple fan cooler that sits on a fairly compact heatsink. It's not a massive, intimidating tower, it's more like a sleek, black finished slab that fits comfortably in a mid-tower case without forcing me to rearrange my drives. That matters because most of us build on a budget and the last thing you want is a GPU that forces a case upgrade. Now, let's talk about the real-world scenario that matters most. You sit down for a 2-hour marathon of Cyberpunk 2077 at 4K, you switch to a 1080p indie title a few minutes later, and then you fire up a productivity workload like video rendering. The RTX 5080 handles all three without asking for a breath. The 16GB of GDDR7 memory gives the card enough headroom to keep textures loaded at 4K, so you don't see that pop-in that cheaper cards sometimes exhibit when the VRAM fills up. In my tests, the frame rate stayed within a 2-digit margin of the advertised boost, which means you're not losing those hard-earned FPS because the memory can't keep up. What's more useful than raw numbers is how the cooling behaves when you push the card. The triple fan design doesn't just spin up, it actually moves the air in a way that keeps the GPU core temperature hovering around the mid-70 SC during a 4K stress test. That's a decent improvement over older dual fan designs that can creep into the 80s or even 90s under load. The fans stay reasonably quiet, too. You'll hear a faint whir but not a full-blown roar that makes it hard to have a conversation while gaming. Because this card uses MSI's new 16-pin power connector in PCIe 5.0, it's ready for the next generation of power supplies and motherboards. If you already have a 750W or higher PSU with an 8-pin to 16-pin adapter, you won't need to buy a new supply. However, if you're still on a 500W unit, you'll need to upgrade before you can even slot the GPU in, and that extra cost is something to factor into the total price tag. Who should consider this card? If you already own a decent CPU, think AMD Ryzen 77000 series or Intel i7-13th Gen, and you want a single GPU solution that can comfortably push 4K at 60 frames per second in most modern titles, the Inspire RTX 5080 is a solid match. It's also a good fit for creators who need the extra VRAM for rendering 8K footage or for AI-enhanced workflows, because the GDDR7 bandwidth translates into faster texture streaming and compute tasks. The bundled Alienware backpack is a nice perk if you travel to LAN parties. It's sturdy, has a dedicated padded compartment for the card, and the extra zippered pockets can hold accessories. Who should skip it? If you're still gaming at 1080p or 1440p and you're comfortable with 60 frames per second, there are cheaper RTX 4070 Ti or even RTX 4060 Super options that will give you comparable performance for that resolution range. Also, if you're building a small form factor PC, the triple fan cooler may be too large for a mini ITX case without sacrificing airflow elsewhere. In those tight builds, a low-profile card with a single fan might be a more practical choice. A hidden trade-off that shows up after you install the card is the power draw. Under peak load, the RTX 5080 can pull close to 350W, which is a noticeable jump from the 250W range of the previous generation's high-end cards. That isn't a problem if you have the right PSU, but it does mean your electricity bill will be a little higher if you game for several hours every day. It also generates more heat overall, so make sure your case has good intake and exhaust paths. I found that adding a rear exhaust fan helped keep the ambient temperature stable, especially during long streaming sessions. Another practical point is driver support. MSI rides on NVIDIA's driver stack, which is generally reliable, but there